All right. I am here with Adam Hochfelder. Adam, how are you doing?
Very good. How about yourself, Ward?
Good, good. Well, Adam, I reached out to you because of Dave Campbell's football magazine, which I'll have you know, I think I buy three or four issues every year because my kids want one and then they lose one and then I buy another. So that's definitely contributing to the cause. But much more
We appreciate
interested
it.
in that. Interested in that. Definitely want to hear the backstory. But I'm, from a business perspective, equally as, if not more, interested in sports in action and finding out about learning more about that. But can we start with the magazine and kind of how that came to be and what your role is now?
Sure. Sure. So the magazine actually started in 1960, 10 years before I was born. A sports writer in Waco was the sports editor of the Waco Trib. His name is Dave Campbell. He
Okay.
realized there were lots of national magazines covering college and football, but none covering the Southwest Conference, if you remember what the Southwest Conference was, none covering them anywhere near as in depth as he would like. And so he decided he wanted to create his own, but he had a great idea. And really, the differentiator that's kept us going for 61 years is he included the high school football ranks, previews, team previews. He included those in his first issue, and nobody had even thought of tackling that. High school football, if you live in Texas, Ward, so you know
Sure.
it's a cultural phenomenon. There is no other state that does it to the level that Texas does. And they've
Why do
figured that
why
out.
do you think why do you think that is? Why do you think Texas is so unique? And by the way, I'm originally from, and I grew up playing in California.
Okay.
And it is not, there were a lucky day for us, and we were a good sized school, was maybe 1,000,
Yeah.
maybe we would have got 2,000 in the playoffs in Sacramento.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I live near Lake Travis High School now, and that's where my kids go. And I mean, that's a good crowd for a JV game. So
Right.
why
Right.
why is Texas like that, and how did that evolve?
Texas, a couple things. First, it's certainly evolved to being more than just the football team. So you go to a Lake Travis game, I live in Flower Mound, Texas. You go to a Flower Mound game, and you got 300 people in the marching band. You've got 100 kids on the dance team. You got 50 kids on the cheer team. So it's just a way, it has evolved into a community event where it's just a thing to do on Friday nights, where the whole town comes together. My kids, even though I'm a football guy, I played football. My son didn't play; he marched. He was in the marching band, and so we went to the
Okay.
games as a band parent. And obviously, yeah, football's football's what I do, so I went obviously to watch football. But Texas has just found a way to involve the entire community in a way that's just a little different. One other thing that has been fairly unique for Texas that is a differentiator. I think there's a couple states that still do it this way. Most of the competition in Texas is, a big portion of it is segregated between private schools and public schools. And that's important in the sense of Lake Travis. All those kids that you watch play for Lake Travis, they all live in Lakeway or they live in that area.
Yes.
So that keeps that community going. Now, I'm not saying other states are doing it wrong, but I've gone to the Florida State High School Championships before. They're played in Orlando, at least they were. I think they still are. And the talent on that field is just as good as Texas. I hate to admit that because you see those kids populate the SEC and go on to the NFL. But it was two private schools playing. So what you had in the
Right.
stands were parents of those teams and some really hardcore fans. When Lake Travis plays, whether Lake Travis is a powerhouse, but when Lake Travis plays, the entire community of Lakeway comes to watch them play because they've seen those kids, they've grown up with those kids. Their kids are either on the field, marching in the band, cheering, or they're on their way to doing one of those activities. So that community feel is just very different in Texas. Other states have great high school talent, but they're plucked to go to private schools either for athletic reasons or other academic reasons, and it just doesn't have that same sense of community. So I think the tradition involving all the extracurricular activities and taking those extracurricular activities beyond football so seriously, and then keeping the private schools and public schools segregated is a big reason why Texas takes it to the level of obsession that we do. And I thank God for that, because that's how I make my living.
For sure. I mean, that's a great point, because thinking back, and as I told you off air, I'm from California originally, but all the best schools in California are all private schools in every major city. So when I
Mater Dei, I think, is one, and there's some really powerful.
Well, De La Salle is a famous one. They've made movies about.
Right.
But De La Salle is in Concord, but none of those kids are within a 10-mile radius of De La Salle for the most part.
And it's a great product. Yeah, it's a great product on the field. Those players
team,
go on
amazing players.
And if you're really into football, you'll see it, but it's different. And like my wife happens to teach at Flower Mound High School, but I live about 2 minutes away from Flower Mound High School, and that's just the place to go on Friday nights. And the town comes together, and this community, we have several high schools in the area, but this particular part of town comes together, watches their team play, win, lose, or not, because like I said, your kid is either on the team or in some supporting fashion of it, or they grew up with people on the team and you just want to watch them. And that's just a little different in Texas.
And what's interesting is, we've mentioned Lake Travis, Flower Mound's a great school, and in the Dallas area, Metroplex, I guess, you got your you got a bunch of your Allens, your DeSotos, all these. You got your Katie's down in Houston, but what I think is also unique about Texas is the smaller schools, and just how amazing those fan bases are. It's really interesting, when you drive in, because from California you drive into El Paso. The one I remember was Van Horn, Texas. I don't know if you've ever been there, but we drove in there, and I mean, it's got I don't know how many people in the town, but it's not many. But you look at it, and the high school stadium, you sit there and you go, how could they possibly have a stadium that big in Van Horn, Texas? And they fill it.
Right. And they probably say, how could we not have a stadium that big? So just
they're probably sitting there saying, we need a bigger one.
Right. Trying to attract teachers and families to come just to see their kids play. Yeah, two of my favorite stories since I've been doing this, I've done this since 2005. We also have a partnership with the UIL, which is the governing body of high school athletics. So we work and help put on the media and sponsorships for all the state championships. And two of my favorite stories doing this since 2005. One, there was a state championship a few years ago in Houston at the NRG Stadium where the Texans play, and a town called Canadian, which is in the panhandle of Texas. And if you're not familiar with, I know you are, but it is as far away from Houston as humanly possible. In fact, it was over 620 miles. And that team put on yellow dog buses. Those kids got yellow dog buses and drove to Houston. And I'd be darned if there wasn't 5,000 or 6,000 people from Canadian in the stadium that made that trek. And that odyssey, 600 miles back and each way, pretty amazing. Second memory that I'll never forget. These are about small towns, which is what made me think of these stories. Gosh, I can't remember how many years ago. The 6-man championships, which 6-man schools are. Some states have 8-man, but Texas has 6-man. Tiny farm towns, tiny. Generally less than 1,000 people in the towns. Throckmorton was playing a team, and I don't remember who they were playing, but they're playing at AT&T Stadium for the state championship, the home of the Dallas Cowboys. And there was 7,000 people in the stands to watch two teams whose combined population was just over 1,000. So 7 times the population. If you do the math on a town of 1 million people, it'd be the equivalent of a 7 million person attended game. So it was, everyone that ever lived in those towns, one was Throckmorton, I forgot the other. Everyone who ever lived, had a relative, any history, they were at that game to watch. And I'll just never forget. Again, 7,000 people in a big stadium isn't that impressive until you think about the population of those two towns. And that's just what Texas high school football is about.
It is. And one of the because Lake Travis, we go to the playoffs every year. And my oldest son, he's a sophomore, so he played with the team in the playoffs last year. And it's interesting just to see, the game before and the game after, which are usually much smaller schools. and there's just as many fans, for these
Right.
2A, 3A, 4A schools, and they're just, and then just the sheer volume of people who aren't even affiliated with the schools who go to, especially the playoff
Right.
games.
Right.
So,
It's town gathering, and the community piece is what we pitch and what we sell with all of our high school assets. It's we're not selling. We sell some eyeballs in some respects because there's obviously a lot of people that go to these, but we're really selling that community, and that's what's a differentiator between us and an NFL or a college. We're selling the culture of Texas and the communities of Texas, and that's our bread and butter.
So let's turn to the marketing aspect of your business, because it is very, very unique, and I doubt in any other state there's anything close to the ability to market to high school football programs. So what is that like for your clients, and what type of a client reaches out to you? Because looking at the website, there's some large names there, and I'm sure you have smaller clients as well. It's probably all over the place.
Right. I'll answer the question, but I want to take a step back. So Sports in Action is the company. We own Dave Campbell's Texas Football. We also are a marketing company, as you were alluding to. So we have the marketing and media contracts for the UIL. So we represent them, much like an entity might represent the NCAA for their championships.
Sure.
And we have some other associations. We work with the Texas High School Coaches Association, which is 25,000 member strong association in Texas, largest of its kind in the country. So how we market that, again, is just that community piece. So we have a client, a corporate Fortune 500 company. We're not talking to their national ad agency. They're not interested in those people are buying TV for college football or NFL
Sure.
or whatever. We're talking. Our sweet spot is Texas controlled or regional controlled money that want to do something different, something that differentiates themselves and show that they're part. I'll use this word 50 times in our talk that I already have. Shows they want to be part of the community. So it's a fun event to watch your son play for the Cavaliers every Friday. That's a special thing. You will only have a few years of that before he moves on. He probably won't play again, or maybe he plays in college. So we try to transfer that special experience, giving our clients access to that, giving that emotional tie. You're watching your son play. There's nothing like watching your kids do anything, whether it's singing, dancing, acting a play, or playing football. And we're trying to open the door to that community for our clients, give them a special connection. It's a differentiator. It's not as easy to measure on a spreadsheet as ads on a TV network or anything like that, but it's very unique and different. And so we try to deliver that community. We also live in a state, as you know, moving from California, that has a very proud, special identity. All states, I guess, do. They all stick their chests out.
Not like Texas.
Texas is just unique. So that culture, we wrap ourselves in a Texas flag as much as we can. Our logo, the Dave Campbell's logo at least, has the Texas flag embedded in it. That wasn't obviously an accident. We want to wrap ourselves in the flag and the culture, wrap ourselves in that community. And if we can give our clients access to that in a very special way, we think that's a differentiator for ourselves.
And is it kind of mainly large brands? Are there new brands that are trying to get products and services out there? I mean, what's kind of your sweet spot?
We have two kind of buckets. So we do have a lot of large brands that either have a Texas, like I said, a Texas pot of money, or Texas control, or Southwest control. We've got, again, so Ford is a sponsor and Honda is a sponsor. We have two auto sponsors.
Oh, wow.
So Honda's all over the country advertising, but they obviously have an interest. They have budgets to hit and budgets to spend in Texas, and we help them achieve those goals just in Texas. So those are some national brands. We have insurance carriers. We've got regional grocers, all those sort of things. The other thing that's kind of a sweet spot for us is folks are trying to sell their products or services to schools. So we have relationships with Nike, with Gatorade. We have relationships with data services companies. They're trying to sell services to high schools, web streaming companies. They're trying to get into that high school market because they actually have commerce directly from those high schools. So those are the kind of the two levels we have. there's no one that doesn't fit us, because if they're involved in business in Texas, we would attack them. We always thrive. The sweet spot for us is if they have a Texas centric goal or Texas regional goal or Texas pot of some funds. Again, I was talking to folks with Coca-Cola in Atlanta and their national brand managers. I'm probably not getting past the first meeting. If I'm talking to a regional director for Coca-Cola or the distributor or bottler for Coca-Cola, and they have funds and needs and budgets to hit sales goals in Texas, I'm going to get an audience because we deliver a unique experience. So that it's not necessarily a brand as much as it is finding the person or persons that have a Texas focus, or at least a Southwest focus, because I don't do you much good in Oklahoma or North Dakota.
And also if the company, their main marketing director is in Atlanta, for instance, or New York City, they're probably not even going to understand the impact that high school football would even have for their
brand.
You know
what? You know what's funny you say that. Yes, in general, but that is really changing. And over the last, I started in 2005. And over these 15 years, more people from all over the country that don't have roots in Texas know of the phenomenon of Texas high school football. So we do get some calls. The key is they have to have a Texas focus, because no one's going to
some type of presence here.
Yeah, but we'll get calls from folks that oversee a brand that have a budget or a goal in Texas, and they've never been to Texas before, but they've seen it. Honestly, some of it's the TV show / movie Friday Night Lights, which was very popular. Some of it is just how ubiquitous Texas high school football players have been. I mean, the NFL, I think, had over double-digit starting quarterbacks last Sunday from the state of Texas. Your high school, Lake Travis, had two high school, two kids. Well, actually, Baker might have been out with COVID, but
I think he had COVID. But Baker, and Garrett Wilson, and then you add in Westlake.
And Westlake has two also.
Right, that less than 10 miles away. It was something like a sixth of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL from those two schools.
Yeah, and you got Kyler Murray from Allen. You've got Matt Stafford from Highland Park. So there's I think there was a week this year where
Patrick Mahomes
from
as well.
White House, I think it is. So
it's
it definitely was right at, or I think just over double digits one week this year, and that's amazing to think about. So it just seeps into the culture. Again, like I said, we can sell to a national brand. They just have to have a Texas focus. And lately, over the last 5 to 10, there are folks from outside the state marketing in Texas that know of high school football. So we don't have to explain ourselves from scratch as often as we used to. We still have to sometimes, but it's just becoming bigger and bigger.
You mentioned it a little, but I'm wondering how much the Friday Night Lights brand, from the book to the movie to the TV series, has really added to the mythos of Texas high school football across the country. And I'm curious, from your perspective, was especially the book as big when you were growing up in Texas as it was for me and my friends back in Sacramento?
I can't only speak for Texas, but obviously it was a big deal. In fact, it came out in '89, I think it was. I was working. Right. I was in a college, but I was home in Dallas working at the Galleria in Dallas, which is a big shopping area at the time when malls were big. And Permian was in a state championship, or late state playoffs or championship. So I was home for Christmas break working at Macy's, of all places. We opened the store and all these people flooded in with stuff saying Mojo. I had no idea what it was. And someone said, that's the book that people are talking about. I actually read that book. I still have it. And it was great. And then that kind of subsided. And it was a arguably critical look, or at least an in-depth look at high school football, both sides of it, all sides of it. Then the movie came out and it was fairly popular. But I think, and I wasn't working in the business when either the movie or the book came out, as I was saying. But when the show came out a few years later, and it was, I mean, my opinion, very well done. And the high school portion of it, the high school football, was neat, but that was secondary to the story. And it kind of told the story of how important high school football was. And so to answer your question, I noticed a lot more less explaining from folks out of state what high school football is about in Texas as that show became more popular. And I guess it's kind of got a little bit of a cult following. We had a side note. We had a funny side part, a tiny part of that. We got called by their producers about making some mock covers of our magazine to be featured in the show. And we gave them some magazines, some real ones to use as props. So 2 or 3 times in the show, you'll see a fake cover of Dave Campbell's or just a real one on a coach's desk. And that was kind of fun.
I'll have to look for that. I'll have to look for that.
Yeah.
You know, we would. So first of all, it's funny because we all had the book on my team in Sacramento, and we all would like read it in the locker room before games.
Yeah.
And what's funny is now my son, he's a sophomore. Him and his buddies, they all have read it too.
Right.
That's the longest book I'm sure any of them have ever read, but they're all still into it. They all.
It's always good to read the book. The movie is good. As I say, the movie is a quality movie, but it's not. There's massive departures from the book, so I would always recommend reading the book then watching the movie. And the TV show is it's called Friday Night Lights. It might as well just be called.
It's not. Yeah, it's completely different.
Completely, but they all were good. I think they all had a place, and they were very entertaining.
Yeah. Well, turning to college football for a minute, because I guess that's where the magazine started out. It's interesting in Texas how big for towns, even the college football. I'm sorry, turning to college football, how big college football is, and just how many powerhouse schools they have here. And I guess the last few years, especially the UT fans are probably disappointed by the results, but it's incredible how just big football is at the college level here, even compared to other states.
We do something fun.
Yeah,
we do something fun on our site, or we did. We might have taken it down this year with all the COVID stuff. But TexasFootball.com is our digital presence. And we used to do something called a heat check, which is just a ranking of all the teams, not by quality, meaning that Texas is clearly, whatever their struggles are on the field, they would beat Abilene Christian 99 times out of 100 or 100 times out of 100.
Sure.
But we put just winning streaks and a couple other factors. We called it the heat check or something to that effect. Anyway, there are 43 teams that play college football in Texas. 43.
Oh, wow.
Double digits play Division or FBS. So, which is very unique. Now California has a lot, Ohio has a lot, Florida has a lot, but not 43, and definitely
That's a lot.
Definitely not 10 FBS schools. So, funny thing about Texas is the favorite team probably for most fans is the University of Texas, and the most hated team for most fans is the University of Texas because you just don't. I always try to tell people the difference between what's going culturally in a state like Oklahoma and Texas. Now, all apologies to Oklahoma State, great school, they're a great football team. If you're in Oklahoma and you had no association with either school, 85% of that state is rooting for Oklahoma, maybe 90%.
Sure.
And then the Oklahoma State contingent, they're loyal alum and folks that go there. In Texas, it's probably 35% of the state is rooting for Texas, but 65% is rooting against them. And it's just a different, just perspective. And that's just the way it is. I'll confess, that's where I went to school. I'm a Longhorn. My son is a senior at the University of Texas. So I root for Texas as a personal fan, but I know while it's probably the biggest in a plurality, it's not the majority. And Texas being who it is and how its history and all the things that go into it, it just elicits a response one way or the other. You're either with them or you're against them. And in Texas, because the state is so big and so diverse with all those schools, I would argue informally it's the majority against them. Same with A&M, same with some of the other schools. It just, they elicit passion one way or the other. It's not everyone's rowing the boat in the same direction.
They really do. I mean, we've gone to the UT Oklahoma game the last 2 years up in Dallas, and on the way back, we've stopped in different small towns for dinner on the way back to Austin. Right. And it is, kind of like that. Like, a quarter of the people are horns up, and like a quarter of most of the people are scowling at you.
Right.
And we're a bit unique and lucky that we come here having come from California, and we get to root for all the teams. So, we've been to all the different games, and, I'm embarrassed to say, I think I have hats for all the major colleges, and it's all, rabid, amazing fan bases there for all
my
schools.
Personal allegiance is to my alma mater, but my work allegiance, if any team from the state of Texas breaks through and gets into that top 10, it's great for our business and traffic. So right now, A&M is the best team in Texas and have a shot at the CFP. So Giga Aggies, there was a time until SMU lost, and they were on the cover of our football preview, the summer book that we do. So I was all in on SMU, and from a work perspective, because that's just the better the team, the more interest. So right now, it looks like A&M's on top of the food chain, and I think they just postponed their game, but they have a legit shot at the playoff as of right now. So we wish them the best.
They do. We got to go to the A&M Oklahoma State, of all people, bowl game last year in NRG Stadium, and
Texas Bowl, right?
Amazing fan base there.
Yeah, we're a partner of that bowl game.
Oh, cool.
So we have a platform we call Mr. Texas Football. Believe it or not, Mr. Basketball for Indiana is a brand. Those things have been around, but no one had started a Mr. Texas Football. So since that's our brand name, Texas Football, we created it and copyright protected it. And the Texas Bowl is one of our partners. So we actually announced it at that game. And in fact, the player, we love the Mr. Texas Football to stay in the state, but Marvin Mims, who went to Oklahoma, was our Mr. Texas Football. So
there you go.
And we usually have the player there. I didn't work that game this year. I can't remember, but I've worked it a few years, and most of the time the player comes, we give him a cool trophy, and it's part of the pregame. But that's a great bowl game, and I saw it.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, how many of the Texas bowl games are y'all affiliated with?
Well, we don't. We have kind of advertising sponsorship partnerships with the Cotton Bowl and the Texas Bowl. We used to do some things with we used to do some work with the Alamo Bowl. Those are great people. It's an awesome event. So we want to support those bowls just in general. Certainly want to cover them and highlight them. But we have formal relationships with the Goodyear Cotton Bowl and the Texas Bowl.
Okay, cool. In terms of just getting back to advertising for a minute, how much has the advertising medium changed from when you first started? I imagine it was mainly print and TV, and now social is such a big part of it. What's that transition been like, and kind of what skill sets has your organization had to develop over the years?
Yeah, it's nothing. If I go back and talk to my 35-year-old self who started in 2005, it's nothing like it. We sold a lot of it, print ads, as you were asking or hinting at, and we had a small fledgling website, TexasFootball.com. Didn't know how to sell that. Still, you could argue we don't know how to sell that, but we have migrated into what we call integrated sponsorships over the years, and that is taking, as I was saying earlier, taking a brand into the community. So on non-COVID years, this has been a weird one. We might have an agent or a representative or a contractor to 15 games on a Friday, taking somebody with a tent, a table, a pregame presentation, or pep rally the day before. We take them to the community. We use our media, the magazines. We do two print books a year for Dave Campbell's football. They have a basketball book too, actually. But we use those as kind of anchors and do a lot of integrated content where they might have advertising or content in those, as well as TexasFootball.com, as well as our social media to promote all the things we're doing in the communities on a weekly basis. But we're integrating it all. So where we used to sell an ad to Gatorade, now we're taking their product to the state championships and making sure that the sideline looks like an NFL sideline with the tray or the cart and the coolers and squeeze bottles and all that sort of stuff. In some cases, not Gatorade, but we're doing product drop-offs. We've got folks going, like I said, to pep rallies, to student assemblies, anything we can do to take our media brand, highlight the kid, but we bring in the sponsor along the way. So we have to surround to differentiate ourselves. We just have to do that. There aren't agencies buying print only media. There are very many if left. That's just not what they do. So we're just doing all we can to integrate our digital content, our community activation on site into what I call integrated sponsorships.
Yeah, and I guess the integrate is the right word because a lot of what you're doing is more in person stuff that I'm guessing you send
Right.
off on social and stuff like that. But it really is a
Right.
lot of in
Right.
person
So
face to
if
face.
I'm given a scholarship presentation or a community spirit award that we come anything we can come up with to highlight a teacher, a parent, a spirit squad, a coach, anything, we'll come up with a name to put on it, put a sponsor with it, take it to the community, and then we use our media to highlight it and amplify it. So, but the kids getting into that community now with COVID, we've done way more exactly as you and I are doing. We're doing presentations digitally, and we've managed to fight our way through it. And maybe with all things, there'll be a lot more digital presentations than what we've done in the past, and not do as much on site. But on a non-COVID year, in a given week, we might have 20 in-person appearances. Now, again, that includes just going to the coach's office and giving them something at pep rally, student assembly, and a game. So we're everywhere we can be to get our customers' products in front of those communities.
Interesting. So COVID has obviously just changed stuff significantly. Obviously, doing more, Google Hangouts, Zoom calls like we're doing now. How has that affected the season in general? Because I know like we can't even really get tickets to the varsity games right now on Friday.
Right.
It's had to change things dramatically.
Right. High schools are going to struggle. High school athletic departments are going to struggle. They're our old school model. Very little media revenue. It's almost all they have. A school like Lake Travis has a sponsorship team, or maybe probably the Booster Club, and they have some media rights revenue. But their revenue for the school district comes from ticket sales. The NFL is losing money because it doesn't have ticket sales, but they're still making billions of dollars from TV. So we aren't a school district, but from a school district perspective, they're going to be hurting for this loss. For us, we have done a pretty good job of substituting. Again, instead of talking to the coach and giving him a presentation, we put a digital background. I think I've got my blinds behind me, but we'll put a digital background and do things with sponsor logos and blow that up on social and digital media to the best of our ability. So we're not as reliant. If we had if there's a 1 year hiccup on attendance, it's okay. We can survive it. If over time, the audience dwindled to 10% or 20%, it would show up in our clients would be going to games and there's no one there, so it doesn't look as good. But we're surviving okay.
Have you noticed any change? Because the high school games have always been on TV, but now I've noticed, like in our own house, and we'll candidly have friends over on Friday night as well, but we're watching kind of on, apps where we're streaming to our TV. Do you see that as kind of getting more popular in the future, or does that kind of depend on how long COVID lasts on?
Well, you might not be aware. So the way Texas was structured pre-COVID is high schools were not allowed to show a live Friday game on TV or digitally streamed on Friday nights. So if a high school wanted their game, had an opportunity to put on TV or a stream, and they wanted to do it live, they could move it to Thursday or Saturday. If you wanted a game on Friday, it would have to be delayed 30 minutes after its conclusion. That rule has been in place since television has been around. So this year, the UIL, who's our partner, decided to waive that rule because of COVID. So schools that couldn't get the ticket revenue could sell or go into partnership with a streaming company and or on their own, or somehow try to monetize that digital stream. And maybe a few more TV stations are doing live games as well. Now the cost to produce a streamed, pretty decent quality football game is such a fraction of what it used to be that a lot of people have gotten into the space.
Right.
And so you've seen a 10-fold or 20-fold increase of games this particular year. It remains to be seen if that rule, it's a prohibition that was basically waived, if that waiver will continue in 2021. There's lots of strong opinion on that. I will tell you, anecdotally, I don't have a study on this. Most schools, this is an Adam phrase, but most schools, when they do do the math on tickets versus digital, they're stacking dimes to replace dollars. So
Right.
they're not making. At any part of the pay per, if there is a pay per view on the stream, they have a fraction of it. They probably bundled them and sold them. So they're making a dime for the dollar, if that. So I have a feeling there'll be some strong opinions to remove that waiver. But there's also a high demand. It's been very successful, and people have enjoyed watching the games on their laptops or their home, TVs or phones or whatever. So just going to be a lot of strong opinion, and we're in the middle of all that right now. Now, one last comment on that rule didn't apply to high school playoffs, so there were opportunities to stream playoffs in the past. That might be what you're referring to. But this year was the first year regular season Friday night games were allowed to be streamed live in Texas.
No, that's what I was talking about. Is this year that's what we've had to do because we can't go to the games. But I'll also tell you that I think as soon as we're all allowed to go, we'll go back to the games because, like as you said earlier, there really is nothing like it.
There's certainly, right. We'll see how it all plays out, and the UIL doesn't control the local rights, but they set that rule. So it is to be determined. There's some great parts about having these games available to grandparents who don't live in the community or folks that just couldn't go to the game whether there was COVID or not. They can now see their kid, their family, their community, whatever it might be. So there's advantages of the waiver going away, and we'll just see how it unfolds over the next 6 months.
Yeah, but that stacking dimes and missing the dollars is a good phrase because they can't be making as much money as they do from ticket sales.
Right. Nowhere near, almost no chance. I mean, there might be a school like Lake Travis that's incredibly advanced in their marketing and found some way, but for the most part, they're losing money.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed having you on. How can folks reach out to you if they are interested in your services?
Yeah. So our main outreach on the high school side is texasfootball.com, and they can click contact us. They can go to sportsinaction.com, which is our company website. All of our great content's on texasfootball.com, and we have a basketball product called texasbasketball.com. So they can find me any one of those ways, or they can go to sportsinaction.com and they can find my name. And sportsinaction.com, we have some case studies of how we've translated into this community outreach. And but the easiest way to do it is just pick up the phone and call me once you get on the website and find my name.
Well, anyone who wasn't clear up front, participating in Texas football as a sponsor is definitely one of the best ways you can possibly reach Texas communities because it is the best and the biggest thing going. So, well, again, Adam, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time.
You bet. Take care.
Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.